This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a Board of Commissioner work session. It is August 25th, 2020, and it's approximately 1 p.m. So work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and to listen to the discussion, but there is generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. Today's topic is the strategic plan, and we have Terry Moore here with us from Portland State University. And Terry, you are going to be running the meeting today, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And should we do a check-in to see which commissioners are online right now? This is Commissioner Sullivan. And I see Commissioner Thompson. I see Commissioner Nebaker. And who else do we have?
Dawn and Monica are on, and then we have staff members, and we do not have Commissioner Aquila or Commissioner Webb yet.
Shall we go ahead? County Manager, what do you think?
I would be ready to go ahead, except now I have a problem because I'm looking at my screen, but I don't have control of I've got the full screen image up, but I don't have control of it anymore. Teresa, I need your help.
So I see the sheriff has arrived. Hello, Sheriff Phillips.
Yes, your screen is showing for us, Terry.
It is showing. Let me exit full screen a minute here. Okay. There we go. Now I'm back. Okay, is the screen still showing okay, Teresa?
It is. It's not full screen though.
Yeah, that was problem when I made it. I'm just going to do it like this. When I made it full screen, I lost control of the.
Okay.
Of it. I think I've got it now. Good.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Work session 3, we've got brief introductions. The commissioners have already checked in. Terry Moore from PSU. I see Don on the line. Is there anyone else that we need to acknowledge before we move on or not? Teresa, is that?
I'm going to send this text to Commissioner Aquila and Commissioner Webb.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say go ahead, Terry.
Okay. All right. So the agenda is this, just the overview. We've got the introductions done, and now here's the agenda.
I do see Commissioner Aquila has joined us.
Okay, thank you. Taking him off the list.
I've got, and Teresa, does my cursor show up when I do this or not?
Yes.
You see it? Okay. So the main items are the vision, mission, values, and principles, and getting through that language and getting that right. Then a break, then deciding on what focus areas you want to work on, and then the process by which we're going to run work groups to do that. And there's the agenda. I will try to adhere to that as we move along to the times that are there. This is a slide from last time, the basic procedures that we have here. I'll make a presentation. I'm keeping it much shorter this time, and then more time for commission discussion. On the GoToMeeting, you guys are now better at that than I am, and if any of you got here early, you can attest to that. Watching me kind of messing around trying to figure this out. But it's not here today, but Teresa's going to play that role. If you've got something that you want to say, put your hand up, and Teresa will put you in the queue. And then Teresa, you just, I won't be in charge of that. When we get to the discussion, you can just call on people in the order that you've got them, okay?
Yes, that sounds good.
And then if you have a question, say for me or for Don or for another commission, say for me, and I answer it, and you want to follow up, then feel free to do that as part of it. Don't get back in the queue again. Let's get it done with at that time. And then, consistent with any meeting, Don here and Monica to answer questions. And if we can, try to finish one topic before going to the next one. So if something that gets said on a certain topic reminds you of something else, put your hand up and get in the queue. But when we get to you, I'll ask you if you're still on this one or if you're waiting to be on another one. And if it's waiting for the other, then Teresa will keep track of that. And just a piece of advice: when close is good enough. If it feels like that you've been heard and you think that what's going to happen is going to deal with your question, then we'll try to move on. One thing, I went through the surveys. Thank you for sending me those. One thing from one commissioner was a wish for today, which I think I'll reiterate: focus on the ideas for the county's future and less on the wording. I know we have to get to the wording, but let's not. I don't think any of us wants to get into nitpicking over the wording today. We're going to have to do some of that, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. So that's. Are there any questions about procedures before I go on? Okay, that was clear from last time. Here we are.
Commissioner Neverton.
Yeah,
sorry,
this is about future meetings. So I noted, Terry, that in your email that we were going to have a Zoom meeting. So if they're all going to be GoToMeeting, then can that be stated in the future? I got a little confused because some of my meetings are Zoom, but most of the county ones are GoToMeeting. So and it has to do with what device I'm going to use. So if it is GoToMeeting, state GoToMeeting, please, in the future.
That was probably me. I mean, the number of mistakes I made on this, I mean, they're countable, but they're a lot more than I wished I made. I'll bet that I said when we go to the Zoom meeting, because every meeting except this one I go to is Zoom. So Zoom to me is like Kleenex or something, you know, it's the term that I use in the tissues. So I will remember that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, thank you. It just makes it easier for me to navigate. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So here's where we are on the strategic plan briefly. You've seen this slide before on the outline that's more or less approved. And where we are now is, I mean, well, on the strategic plan, there's the what and the why, and that we've already solved in previous meetings. And I could write up this section now and probably will start that. The next thing is the foundation for action, and that's what vision, mission, values, and principles. Then there's the situation assessment, which we've got done. And then there is this part, which is the 5 categories of action, which we're calling focus groups. And today we're working on these 2 things: the vision, mission, values, and principles, and the focus areas. And by the end of the day, if we've got it done, then all of this part of the plan, sections 1, 2, and 3, will be done enough from your perspective that I can begin writing a draft, and the work will then shift entirely to this part 4. Why decisions need to be made today? The general agreement among the council and the managers is to adopt this plan before the end of the year. When I work that backwards, that makes it a really tight schedule. And it makes it tight because the end of the year is not the 31st of December, because that's the middle of the holiday season. Typically, it's by the 15th at the latest. And to adopt by the 15th of December means that we have to start talking about it, a draft version sometime in November. And to have a draft version sometime in November, we've got to write it in October. But to write it in October, we need to have the results of all the working group work on the 5 focus areas, which means that's all got to happen in September and early October. that's a very tight schedule, but that's what we're working on. And for today, what I want to point out is that the vision, mission, value, and principle language, we can get it, we don't have to get it perfect, because we want to get it good enough so that we're not adopting focus areas that are inconsistent with our values, which reading these surveys doesn't seem likely at all, your responses to those. And we can tune up that language later, but the thing that's critical is this focus area stuff, because we have to start working on the focus areas soon, like next week, or this week even, and we can't do that until we know what the focus areas are. So I will, as we go through this, I might stop the vision, mission, value stuff before it feels like it's completely baked, so that we can move on and make sure we get the focus group stuff taken care of. So here we are on vision, mission, values, principles. I'm going to summarize what I have as suggested language, your responses to that, and then turn it over to you for your discussion. The assumptions that I had, I listed out. Those are on pages 2 or 3 of the memo. I'm not going to cover those here. We can go back to that if you want to. And then the focus, the general idea is that we're going to focus on the county as a means, county government as a means of improving quality of life for the people in the county. So the important part here is that I think, at least the way I put it together, is that the vision is about county government, and then through county government improving quality of life. But we're not going to spend, but the vision doesn't describe in detail how citizens perceive that quality of life. It talks about certain aspects of quality of life, but unlike some strategic plans I've seen where it has, relatively happy talk about how citizens are, educated and smiling and, drinking cappuccinos together, and that's not going to be this plan. But we're going to talk about what we're going to do so that the combination of public sector and private sector can provide the means by which whatever people want to make themselves happy is available to them. So then the logic is the one that we've been through before. There's a vision, a mission, values, and values and principles is a little fuzzy because there's a really strict definition that Mike and I were using before, but it doesn't really apply here. And so it's really the principles were further guidance. And as you'll see, at least one commissioner said, I think these are expendable and the plan might read better by getting rid of them. So we'll come back to that. So here's the vision. And I'm not going to read this. I'm just going to go through this quickly and then we'll come back to it. And I can come back to this slide if we want to wordsmith this, but you'll see why we may not want to. So there's a vision. I'll give you, 5 more seconds to refresh your minds on what that was all about. But since most of you responded to the survey within the last day, I assume you've seen that stuff. Then there is a mission consistent with that, which says, well, if we want to achieve that vision, here's what the county is going to do. We're going to describe what services are needed that the citizens want and we think they're willing and seem to be willing to support. And then we're going to provide those effectively, efficiently within budget, fairly, equitably, and in partnership with other service providers, which is a pretty straightforward mission statement. And then there are the values. And this we did a lot of work on this before. And then I sent you some stuff, and then I followed up with each commissioner on an interview, and we spent, I would say, most of our time on values. And so I took all those notes and then tried to get it into 4 values. And you can see, even though I gave you that assignment and said, don't cheat, then I cheated. I put, wherever I could, I put 2 words together. And we can cut that back down, but those words seem to go together. So those are the 4 categories: equity, engagement and collaboration, which I think are really quite, if not similar, at least they go together: transparency and accountability, and effectiveness and efficiency. And then that's really all we have to do for what the 4 categories are, because everything else can be worked out in the work groups. But I went on to say, to give a little bit more detail and say, well, what might be under those headings, so that you could decide whether you like the headings or not. So here's what I said about equity. Here's what I said about the kind of actions that might be under engagement and collaboration. Here are the kinds of actions that might be under transparency and accountability. Or not the actions, but here's what we mean by that. And here's what we mean by effectiveness and efficiency. Now, I'm going to turn this back in a minute, but before I do, I want to show you, I want to finish with the principles as part of this. And then I put principles together, and these are really Don's fundamentals from, I'll say, April or May. And the notion here is that things can change in a hurry. And that second line is the important one. As we think about new situations that are not directly covered by existing county policy, then let's make sure that we're thinking with these principles behind us. And there they are. And several commissioners had comments about those that I'll come back to in a second. So here is my summary of the commissioner response to that survey. You didn't get much time to do it. I didn't expect to get all responses because you had less than 24 hours to get it done. I got 4. And here's the general thing is that 2 of the responses gave what I wrote effectively a 1, which was, I can accept these more or less as they are. And a 2 meant, they're okay, but I've got some things that I'd like to have or that I need to have. And 2 of them were along those lines, and it was mainly for the vision. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have, Teresa, did you get my text about resending the meeting information to Commissioner Webb?
Yes, I'm sending it right now.
Okay, because she wasn't able to get on. So I just wanted to make sure that it was in progress. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Terry.
Okay, thanks. Let me see then. Okay, so on vision, there were 2 commissioners that did, they more or less accepted the concepts and sort of work with my language, but found that it was easier for them to just rewrite it. And that's what I had, I didn't require that, but I had hoped that somebody would take a shot at it. So I started last night trying to, do all that and track changes and show it all. And I finally said, it's just going to be better to just show the commissioners what the alternative language was. So I sent that out to you in a memo last night. I hope some of you got that. And we can go back over that in a minute. So, and we may need to bring that up I just recalled that I might need to bring that up on the screen also. I guess, give me 1 second and let me just have that here in the background so that I can, 1 second, I got to move it. Okay. So when we get to the vision discussion, I have that alternative language here, and we'll come back to that. But for now, we'll stay on this part right here, the overview. On mission, generally, everybody accepted that. One small thing that the word fairly in the mission probably should be equitably, given the discussion about equity as a value. And one person commenting that they liked the idea alternative I had of saying, well, let's just kind of push the mission and the vision and mission together. That was just one person. Under values, one person commenting that the second sentence under equity, that it would be acceptable if that sentence were there, but that second sentence was not a good one. And that, let me show you what that is, just so you know what we're talking about. Equity, it's whoops, sorry. Mission. I don't know, maybe it was the last sentence. In many cases, that will mean equal treatment. In some cases, because of past inequities, fairness may be seen to require preferential treatment for some people or classes. So that's going to be a thing to talk about today. That's what I wrote based on what everybody talked to me about, but you have to see what you think about that. And then, and the second substantive piece was on transparency and accountability. Okay with the concept, but not with the words. And the sense of what was being looked for was honor the letter and spirit of public meeting law. So you want to come back to that one. Otherwise, all of the values were okay with everybody. There weren't any other specific comments with the 4 people that responded. And under principles, there were 2. One was to change one of the bullets, and I put that in my memo to you, where under principles, I had said this, and it would be better to say this. So we can come back to that when we get to the principles part. But that's the summary. And so now I'm not going to get to the focus areas yet. I'm going to stop there and say, let's go to the discussion now. And you can do this however you want. Originally, I was thinking, before I saw your responses, maybe have a general discussion about what you like and don't like, strengths and weaknesses, before we get to edits to the language. But really, I think you've dived in pretty deeply already, and you can do this however you want to go. So I think at this point, I'm turning it over to you for discussion, and Teresa's helping me monitor, and I'll be taking notes.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
And I'll also move, if you tell me what you're talking about, then I'll move to the part of the slideshow that is, or to this other memo that I have that gets focused on the language that you're working on.
Okay, so what we need to do is, if people will let us know when they want to talk, and then tell us, like Terry said, what part they're talking about, so we can put up on the board. And I see Commissioner Thompson's hand up. Commissioner Thompson? Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. I've been thinking a lot about this, and the piece that's missing for me, I don't know if you have it there and I just don't see it, is that whatever we do, we have a process to evaluate what we've done. And then, it's part of the resilience piece. We evaluate, and then we incorporate needed changes. And I don't know if that concept was embedded someplace in this or not, but what I'm looking for is a way to keep this document or these concepts, to keep them informed and evolving. And that just came to me this morning, so I didn't communicate with anybody else about that. But and I'm not sure where it fits inside this discussion, whether it's I don't know where it goes, but I wanted to raise that issue because I don't want it to be like we say it and then we're done. I want it to be like we say it, we apply it, we evaluate, and we modify either what we say is our mission, vision, values, and all that, or we modify what we do.
Commissioner Thompson, I think that's a good point. I'm wondering, Terry, maybe you can answer that. When I was looking at what the mission of the task, the different groups are, is it written in there that there will be some sort of accountability to, let's say, we want to do A by a certain time? Is it written into the tasks that on how we set this up? Because I agree that we don't want to go through this and then not have things happen.
Yeah, I think your comments point out two slightly different versions of the point that was made. I want to be clear on what those are. I'll start with the second one, Commissioner Sullivan's, and that is that as a general county policy, as part of its governance, it may want to have, as part of accountability, as part of effectiveness, it might want to say that the way it's going to handle things is to have benchmarks, performance measurements, certain types of staff reports, etc. That kind of detail is something that would probably be worked out as part of the focus area action, or the focus area on governance, and that one of the actions would be to work out those kinds of performance measurements, for example. That's one way to think about it. What I interpreted Commissioner Thompson to be saying was a little more broad than that and more focused on not how we're going to do all of our business in the future, but on this plan itself. Is there any place in the plan where we say that we've got that kind of accountability, and that accountability means updates and amendments, et cetera. And the closest place that we have it right now would be in the accountability value, and maybe it overlaps a little bit on the effectiveness value. But a different way to handle it would just be to add a statement at the beginning on how this plan will be used, and have a statement in the preface to the plan that says it's a strategic plan. It's got these 5 focus areas, but those can change over time, as can the values and everything else. And it is our wish as a commission and elected officials that all those things be updated regularly. So there are lots of different ways to handle that. I think it's a good point to have, and I'll take advice on how to handle it.
Well, very good. Thanks for clarifying that. Do we have any other comments? I see Commissioner Nebaker's hand is up. Go ahead.
Can Commissioner Webb hear us?
She can now, yes. Right,
Okay.
Commissioner Webb, say howdy to everybody.
I can. I'm sorry. I don't know. Nothing worked of the links that I was trying to get onto. So
well, we're glad you're here now. So
thank you.
Okay.
You're really.
Was that your? Go ahead.
That's okay.
Do you feel like you're grounded in the meeting right now? You know where we're at?
I think I know where you are. Wow, you've really moved quickly.
Well, Terry gave a general overall thing of what we're working on today, but we're really just getting started on the discussion.
Okay.
So, so you're a little bit behind, but there's nothing that you can't catch up with. So,
thanks.
Commissioner Nebaker, did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. So Terry, maybe you can help us with this conversation.
Chair, Commissioner Quila's hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Quila, go ahead.
That's okay. So is this the opportunity to comment on suggestions or changes that we had? Are we getting into that now, or?
Yes, with the proviso that at least the way we're trying to do it, Commissioner, is we're on to the vision, mission, values part, and the focus areas will come up after the break. So if you're talking anything on vision, mission, values, or principles, that's fair game now.
Well, you had already covered the one that I had suggested on the values with regards to equity. I think that it reads fine, and I certainly believe that that should be an area. I just didn't think we needed to get into the whole thing about inequities of the past and preferential treatment and things. I just think that that doesn't need to be included in it. That might be something that we ultimately decide to do, but certainly I don't think it needs to be as part of the values statement and under equity.
The sheriff has his hand up.
Can I add something? I think ultimately what we need to be looking for is justice, which would suggest that we're removing those things that create inequity.
I'm sorry, could you say more about that, Sheriff?
Well, instead of, I mean, there's kind of commonly seen diagrams that try to distinguish the difference between inequality and inequity, right? And so in one, with equality, you give every person, regardless their height, the same stool to try to reach an apple on a tree, right? And the shortest person still isn't tall enough to reach the apples, right? And with equity, you would give the shortest person more, or a taller ladder, or a taller stool, so that he was functionally the same height as everyone else. Of course, we don't have apple trees in government, but I think what we should be doing is looking for ways to remove those barriers that are inequities.
However, we do have short people in government.
Right. Some tall ones.
Who's that?
And I hear we have money trees in government.
So, I mean, to me, I would value that more, to remove the barriers that create either inequality or inequity, than to try to create supports to overcome the barrier.
For me, equity is a big word, and I also had I had an issue with the second sentence, the same one that Commissioner Quila also had on, because it just seems like a sore point. And I think equity implies exactly what you're saying, Sheriff Phillips, and is that if we go about our business in an equitable way, then we will end up with more justice, because everybody will have a chance to get a reach at that apple.
I agree.
I do as well.
Are you, Sheriff Phillips, are you a little uncomfortable with the actual word equity, or?
Oh, I'm not comfortable. No, I'm not uncomfortable with equity. I think that's great. I'm just saying, from my standpoint, especially in criminal justice, we're looking for ways to reduce the barriers, to reduce the challenges that we have to discuss equity, to where we have justice, which would be equal access to everyone, regardless of the challenges. So I just wanted to bring that up. That sometimes providing additional supports, while meaningful, doesn't actually solve the problem.
What do you mean by additional support?
Well, I mean, here we have in our values preferential treatment.
Okay, so several of us were saying that we thought that we could take that last sentence off, just take it off and leave equity means, the fair treatment, access, opportunity, advancement for all.
Right. And I think that would be.
Are you comfortable with that?
I'd be comfortable with that. I was just trying to.
How do the rest of the
thoughts, bigger picture?
No, I think that's great. And what I was thinking, and you don't have, what I was thinking, Sheriff, is that, that's some of the work that you're talking about, removing obstacles. Hopefully we can work on that in our, if we have this as a value, then we'll work on that with our task areas. Some real ways to make that happen. So I haven't heard from Commissioner Thompson or Commissioner Webb. I think I've heard from, let's start over. How do people feel about dropping that last part of that phrase?
Agree
Commissioner
to,
Thompson, how do you feel about that?
agree to drop the last sentence. I think we're agreed that we've got an issue and we want to deal with it, period, stop there.
Okay. Commissioner Webb?
Well, to me, what that sentence indicates is what for years we have called affirmative action. And so I'm a little hesitant to back away from affirmative action because I think it's been an important thing in the last 50 years in this country. So I'm a little uncomfortable with taking it out. But I really, the sheriff's comment about justice and equality versus equity is something I've never heard before, and I'd love to really be able to explore that more. I don't know whether this is the place to do that, but
Real briefly, equality would be equal treatment. Equity is to provide that preferential treatment for people that need it so that they can reach the same goal.
that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought I heard you saying. But so then, to me, that would be an argument for leaving that sentence in.
Well, I think it says equity, which is different than, in many cases, that will mean equal treatment, which is equality.
Right. So
Right.
on this, let me make a suggestion here. I can think of two ways several ways to resolve this. One is to leave it the way it is, which doesn't seem like the right way to do it. So let's say for a minute that we're going to take that part that I just highlighted out as it is. Then there's two ways to handle it. One is to leave it like this. Another way is to make it really short and just have this part at the top, because it more or less, this is mainly a gloss on this. I mean, it adds some detail to it. Or another way is to say, okay, just so people understand what we're talking about, we can say, in many cases, and then put here, but not necessarily all, that will mean equal treatment. That not necessarily all really gives a reference to this language without saying it that way, and I think it's this preferential treatment, which is the part that is the problem. So any of those is a solution that I could work with. And so just kind of, if anybody has any advice on that.
I think just the one sentence, keep it clean and simple, and that's it. I don't think you need any of the in many cases, and I don't think you need the second part at all.
I would also support that, because I think the word equity is a large enough word to handle all of that. And so a short sentence for me works. Commissioner Nebaker?
Yeah, I wonder if using the word like regardless, or and then adding what Commissioner Webb wants, to give more strength to the history of how things have been, because I think that's what she is saying, and she wants to make sure that we don't slip back. Is that correct, Commissioner Webb?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if regardless would work, or with consideration for.
So, Commissioner, so I know where you are. You're saying start right where my cursor is with the word regardless? Is that what you mean by regardless?
I'm not sure that's the right word, but
that's where you are. You're getting rid of two things in yellow, and you're adding something new now right here.
Yeah, possibly. So equity, fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all, regardless, well, it'd be a comma, regardless of past inequities. It just maybe restating of equity must, I don't know.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Well, I think there's a certain beauty to simplicity, and that it can eliminate arguments, and I think equity done right is a very powerful term, and that I personally think that it can't stand on its own, and it's up to us to follow that value.
I agree.
Yes, but I think Commissioner Webb does have a point that, you know, to look at history, because we don't want to slip back. And I'm not exactly sure what the wording could be, but something, we can say equity and fair treatment and for everyone, but it's so easy to forget the past. And I think that's what she is saying. She wants that acknowledged.
Oh, I think that is a value, absolutely. But I'm wondering, in terms of us, of a statement for this document, a statement of values, that perhaps we can talk in another area where we can say, you know, we believe these are our values and this is what we value and these are the reasons why, and maybe have an historic point of view at that point or something. I don't know. I see a hand up, Sheriff Phillips.
Yeah, I think you're on to something, Commissioner. I think sometimes strategic plans get too wordy, and it gets lost on the people that are supposed to really implement it. And if we have values, we need to have, I guess, the supports in place so that people accept those values and turn them into principles, you know, turn them into action, right? And it's easier if you have an easy checklist to recall, these are my values, and have them easily accessed, easily referenced. And maybe we explain why we have values somewhere else in a values statement that combines each of those values into something that you know, is explained, but understands why, it explains why we use those values, why they're important to us.
Well,
But
the other thing too is,
recall.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, but just keep the values themselves pretty simple for recall. Because the value should be a daily test of everything we do, right? And if
Right.
Keep it simple enough that our staff is abundantly clear, equity is one of our values, not cloud it up too much, they'll remember it and probably do it.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you.
So I'm with the sheriff where we talk about equity, period, in one sentence. Then we put our energy toward actions that produce results. The more we talk, the more opportunity for disagreement and getting lost in the woods.
Right.
What we've got is a very powerful concept. If we put our focus on producing the actions and the results, then we can go forward powerfully with agreement in ways that make a difference. And so I would say this one sentence is beautiful, powerful, leave it alone. We aren't going to forget that history. None of us who've been through it will forget that history. Our commitment is clear. Let's carry through on it.
I think that's well said. Are you, Commissioner Nebaker and Commissioner Webb, are you comfortable with keeping it to a simple sentence like that?
In the interest of equanimity, I'm happy to be comfortable with that.
Okay. Sure.
All right, well, we've got one. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think we've got it. I just want to make this point so that people can nod and say, yeah, with this statement, that's where we want to be. Here's my experience, and I'm going to give you just a hypothetical, which is, here's a strategic plan that has values, and nothing about fairness or equity is a value. I mean, it's not listed anywhere. Here's a strategic plan that has, the next one is a strategic plan that just has the word equity in it. That's it. The next one is this strategic plan, as you have it right now, which has the word equity and a pretty clear definition of what you mean by equity. And the fourth one is something that I would expect cities on the East Coast to be adopting, which starts to have language like this in it, where the electorate is such that if they don't have that language, it's not going to make it. And so the difference is they all, in the first case, somebody comes in at some time in the future and you've adopted you're evaluating a policy, and somebody says, well, the reason I don't like that policy is because it's not fair to this particular group. And we say, well, and a new commission says, that's not you, says, well, that's interesting, but that's not one of our values, and we don't care about that. Well, all we care about is the efficiency. And then, but if they've got the word equity in there, then they've got a hook. If they've got the word equity that says fair treatment, access, and opportunity, that's a pretty big hook. They can come in and they can reach to this part if they want to, and whatever commission is there can then have a discussion about that. So I guess where I would be on this is I wouldn't get rid of the word equity, which you didn't say, and I wouldn't get rid of a short definition of it, which you also didn't say. Getting rid of this part is more or less, people can bring that up, and I think that's what you're saying. If that gets brought up, then we're going to have to deal with it, but we don't need to have it in this language right now. Let's keep the language simple and elegant. So if that's where everybody is, that seems fine with me. Okay, I'm looking at heads. Is that where we are? So we're done with equity. Okay, good. So we got equity then. And then so we started with that because Commissioner Coelho brought it up. So if anybody else, and that's not necessarily in any order, we could go back up to vision or mission or go down to another value. So who's next and what do they have?
Commissioner Webb?
I have a small point that I hope is not too nitpicking, but I guess it's on your slide number 15. It's awfully important to me because I have spent so much of my life advocating for measures of effectiveness. But the word efficient and the words efficient and effective are very different words. And effectiveness is a measure of truly of outcomes. Efficiency is really a word that applies to money. It says that you're doing things at the lowest possible cost. And I think that for our constituents who have to support us, whether they like it or not, with their tax dollars, I think that's a really important point to make, that we value the issue of spending taxpayers' money as efficiently as possible. So I think putting those words together, it belittles both of them. So I'd like to see a little bit, because to me, doing the right thing doesn't have anything to do with effectiveness or efficiency. And doing them well is, to me, who decides that? But effectiveness addresses doing things well. But I don't think either one of those things addresses the issue of doing things right. And I think it's worth expanding a little bit to explain what we mean by efficiency and effectiveness.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. So now here's where I get historical. The 1918 local budget law links efficiency and effectiveness. So for me, that's a time-honored tradition rooted in Oregon law that the people put into place to empower them to have an impact on how their tax dollars were spent. So I agree with a lot of what you say about we want to do the right things and do it well. We should have measures for those. I think the science of effectiveness is much more sophisticated than it used to be. And efforts like your own have contributed to that evolution. So I'm grateful for that. But I like efficiency and effectiveness, and I like them linked. It really resonates down to my core with that. That's what the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission existed to do. And to my way of thinking, every kind of citizen oversight is about that. Are the taxpayers getting their money's worth? In the sense, are we doing the right thing in the right way at the right cost? So however we refine that and articulate what that means, they're rooted in both efficiency and effectiveness for me.
Sheriff Phillips?
To me, I think this is about being trusted stewards of public funds and resources, and that we demonstrate that through implementing effective programs that are cost effective. And also I think efficiency could have a time component, because there's critical things we do, and if it drags on too long, it's really not efficient in that respect. So to me, this is about being trusted stewards of public funds and resources, and how we demonstrate it.
Commissioner Nebaker?
So what I'm hearing is that to provide the most effective outcome with the greatest efficiency, is that what Commissioner Thompson is saying? That was the intent in the 1918. So can that be spelled out a little more? Is that agreeable?
Well, if you said it just like that and then added, thank you, that was a very nice summation. I appreciate that, Commissioner Nebaker. So I like what the sheriff said, though, about being trustworthy stewards. So if we let off by saying, demonstrating that we are trustworthy stewards by acting with efficiency, whatever we say after that, because that's the heart of the contract, that social contract that the sheriff often refers to. I like all that folded into this particular value.
I myself, I like effectiveness and efficiency together. I'm wondering if one of the hitches might, the word right things and do them well. But that's just the nature of language. People are gonna interpret it the way that there's all sorts of ways you can throw meaning onto words. And I agree with Commissioner Thompson about the effectiveness and efficiency in the budget. And I think that's what Sheriff Phillips is also saying. So I'm okay with the sentence as it is, or what Sarah, Commissioner Nebaker was talking about with Commissioner Thompson. Go ahead, Commissioner Nebaker.
Yeah, I kind of think that it needs to be spelled out a little bit more. I think doing them well is good, but I think it's a little vague. And anyway, the statement that I made, I think it spells it out, but I don't know if that's what we want, but because I think the reason we're linking effectiveness and efficiency is because of we want to do the most, but we want to honor the taxpayer dollars. But doing the right things and doing them well, yeah, I think that is too vague.
Did anyone capture what you said that you said previously that Commissioner Thompson thought was a good?
I can repeat it. Should I repeat it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Provide the most effective outcomes with the greatest efficiency.
So
how do you feel about that, Commissioner Webb?
I think that says a lot. I really like that. I don't know why, Sheriff, but somehow your words are inspiring me this afternoon. But the idea of trustworthy stewards is,
yeah, I like that
think
too.
That's the kind of thing that we could almost put in our oath of office. Yeah. That it's such an imperative to me. So, but we've got this thing going in terms of style. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I like Commissioner Nebaker's statement, but in order to be trustworthy steward, with ending with being trustworthy stewards of our citizens' resources.
But don't we have trustworthy in the vision statement? Isn't that part of the vision statement?
I think it is.
Trustworthy.
It also might be in transparency, the one up above, the next one up.
So what I am hearing though right now is it sounds like, and I haven't heard from Commissioner Quila, but or maybe we have, but is everyone still okay with effectiveness and efficiency being as one of the values?
Uh-oh.
Somebody's playing a guitar.
Commissioner Sullivan, your audio was going out.
Okay, so we just want to get a pithy statement that will support effectiveness and efficiency.
Yeah.
We have the words and we're working on the pithy statement. And Commissioner Nebaker, have you completely repeated your statement?
Yeah. I mean, do you want trustworthy in there? Because that is, the sheriff has his hand up.
I was thinking, I want to tie the right things back to mission. So how about something to the effect of, in order to accomplish the mission, the county must do so while achieving effective outcomes efficiently, or something along those lines.
Effective outcomes. That's
because what I like to do is tie these values back to the mission and the vision. It makes it flow better for people looking at it.
But do we want, I mean, so effectiveness and efficiency, we want to do this with the greatest efficiency, but we want to provide effective outcomes. So I'm sorry to keep repeating this, but I think because those two words do have very different meanings, I think it needs to be spelled out, not just assume that people understand this, why those two are linked.
Tell me if this helps. Going back to what, trying to tie in with what the sheriff said. Here's the mission statement, which is specify the services it believes that citizens want and are willing to support, and provide those services effectively, efficiently. So here we've got those words in there already up here. And then when you come down here to this part, I think you could bring that mission in by, and I don't have the exact words, but it is effectively provide effective solutions, or effective services for citizen needs. So you tie back up into the needs statement that you have, and to do that efficiently, because I think everybody's agreeing that there's a difference between the effectiveness, which is we've got this program and that is going to effectively address the question, and efficiency. You could be very efficiently, and I do believe that what you choose is part of effectiveness. You could choose to do a program that the sheriff says, well, that's not going to solve it. That's not going to do a damn thing for crime. It's just going to create a whole lot of problems. But boy, we're doing it, and we're doing the best job of putting it together. We're doing an efficient job of putting together an ineffective program. So you have to have both. You got to have an effective program, and once you've got it, then you've got to hew to, an efficient way to get it done. And efficient ties into the budget issue. I think we're all agreeing with that. We're just kind of stuck a little bit on getting that language out. Does that sound right to people or not? Because if it is, then I'm willing to take a shot at everything we've heard and send you language later, and then let you deal with that so that we can move on here.
So could I add 3 words?
Sure.
To achieve our mission at the end. Effective outcomes achieved efficiently to realize our mission, or to blank, to verb our mission. Because what we're doing, we're making the mission happen by doing these effective outcomes achieved efficiently, but we got achieved twice. So some other verb, but you get the idea. It's concise.
I think effective solutions in an efficient manner to achieve our mission.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we got 2 versions of the same thing here. They're pretty close. Is there a preference?
I guess I just really like the word outcomes because they're measurable.
Okay. So we could put effective outcomes in an efficient manner to achieve our mission, or effective outcomes produced efficiently to achieve. I mean, they're pretty similar. We're both.
I like the top one. Effective outcomes produced efficiently.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, good enough.
Good enough.
Are there other things? I think we are going to have to get to the vision statement sometime. Maybe if it's okay, let's go there, because, well, there's 2 under values. There's still the transparency accountability issue that we got to deal with. There wasn't much comment on elaboration and engagement, except that like all the others, it was probably too long. So we might want to trim that down. Transparency and accountability, there was 1 comment on, and then the vision statements we've got to get to. Mission was generally okay with everybody. Everybody said, I'm okay with that. So are you okay going to the vision statements so that we can, is that all right with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So here was my version, and here were 2 alternatives. And I said in my memo, quite sincerely, I just took a shot at it, and now other people have taken a shot. One cuts it down quite a bit. One's about the same length, but may do a better job. Now, I don't know if the authors want to talk about them, or if we just want everybody to read it. And but my recommendation is that we pick one of these 3 to work on, so that we're not trying to wordsmith all 3 of them at the same time. But pick the one that seems closest, and then we can add stuff from others or delete stuff out of it.
Well, this is Commissioner Sullivan. I'm having trouble with so I can't see myself, but y'all can hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so mine was alternative 2, and I was just trying to tighten it up, but and whoever did alternative 1, I think that's even more streamlined, and I like alternative 1. So I'm open to hearing what other people have to say.
I like alternative 1. I think it's nice to have simplicity and brevity.
Yeah, I like it.
I think that what it captures, and I think was in the original language that I think is important, is are those hooks to the different aspects of quality of life that you're trying to provide by providing services, so that there's really something in there for future, that the vision includes everything that people care about, which I think is fair. And now they've got a place that they can see that the county says that either it's going to do something or it's willing to listen if they come in and talk to the county about those issues.
I like alternative one. I'd just like to include trustworthy in that because that is in alternative 2, but not 1. I think it's pretty important.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay, well, I'm just going to edit it right here. Okay, just a minute. That's a county. Partners or provide. Efficiently, equitably, trustworthy. I mean, I get the concept. It's not a word that's got that I can change into an adverb easily. Trustworthily, to add to this list. So, do you have an idea where you want to put that?
I guess a role to constant change. Clatsop County will establish trustworthiness by efficiently, equitably, and effectively partnering, and providing public and private services for blah, blah.
Excellent.
Too much blah, 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 Sheriff. How about trustworthily? I mean, just make up a verb. That's close enough. That's too many words. Sorry, that's my opinion.
I spitballing. I don't know.
Okay, good.
I thought it worked.
Yeah.
Trustworthily that's a good word.
That's
If we invented a new one, that I'm okay with that. We'll call it the Matt Phillips adverb.
how about true efficiently?
Not just trustworthily. Just come on.
I like establish trust by efficiently, equitably.
Geez.
Okay.
I don't, what, Commissioner Commissioner Thompson, do you have a way to add trustworthy into that?
Yeah, well, trustworthily. I mean,
Okay.
that's a
not a
now,
word.
we're
Yeah,
at
it is. We can do it. I promise that isn't too big a stretch. Fewer words is better, and people will get what it means.
Let me just say we're at the point of that we don't want to be at, which is fussing over a word here. We agree that trustworthy has to get in here. Let me and my thesaurus work on this a little bit later, and we'll see what we can come up with. But I get the point. Unless somebody wants to say make a motion right now and establish one of those two, if there's a consensus, I'll write it down.
I think, oh, sorry, I should raise my hand. Can I speak? Yeah, we'll establish trust. And then it could be a colon. Forget, no? Commissioner Thompson's upset.
We cannot establish trust in other people. All we can do is say that we are committed to behaving in a trustworthy manner. That's all we have control over.
Well,
that's my heartburn with the other construction.
okay.
All we can do is us. On a good day.
In a world of constant change, Clatsop County will.
I vote for asking Terry and his gang to smooth this out.
Yeah.
I agree, Commissioner Webb. I think what we are all saying is we wanted the statement to be more succinct, and we're happy with alternative 1 because of its succinctness, but we would like to get trustworthy in there also. So see what you can do with that and bring it back. And I think is anybody not comfortable with that?
I'm okay. That's fine.
Okay. I'm going to propose, at the risk of proposing something, just so I can get it out, because maybe you'll say yes, and then we won't have to worry about it anymore. Will be a trustworthy the advocate for citizen needs by efficiently, equitably, and effectively partnering and providing public and private services. Okay, that didn't resound, so I'll work on that later.
Terry, can I bring up a point that I had when you reminded me when you used the word citizen, and I'm wondering if we can use the word residents rather than citizen. I wonder how people feel about that.
Or community.
I think well, it's 2 words, but I'm just thinking in this day and age, citizens seem more, residents seems more inclusive or
But the one problem that we have to deal with then is you can have business owners and employees that are not residents, and are they part of the people that you're working for or not? I'm not sure.
People who are here temporarily, and so community members is like a more fluid. It's 2 words, I agree, but it still is a more fluid and adaptable boundary. But because I agree with you, we can't say citizens, not today.
What does, because the word citizen implies somebody who is residing.
it gets in the argument of legal or illegal.
Oh, yeah, I see.
So is there agreement to use community members where that shows up?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay.
Commissioner Aquila and Commissioner Webb and Sheriff, how do you feel about that? Are you all right with that? Got a thumbs up. I got a I don't know, and I can't see what Mark Aquila is.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay. Sheriff? Okay.
Okay.
And then I want to bring another word up. I'm sorry. So community member is what we've decided on. Can you talk a little bit about the word facilities? Or well, I guess that's not in number 1, so we don't have to talk about it. Okay.
Okay. I'll just, since you asked, I'll just make it brief. It's not a big deal. I use the term facilities to mean public facilities, which means infrastructure and buildings and things like that. But that's not all that any multi-purpose government provides. They also provide services, some of which are in those buildings and couldn't be provided without those buildings, and some of which are not in those buildings, various social services, et cetera. So the reason I make that distinction is because it often turns out to be a distinction between capital and operations. And so by putting both, then it's clear that you've got both capital and capital, facility, asset obligations, as well as operational program obligations.
Well, that's a very good point.
I'm willing to change it however you see.
It comes up in other places too, not just the vision statement, correct?
Yeah, well, we can look. We'll probably come across it today while we're talking.
Okay. Well, your explanation was very helpful. I understand it better now. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just see very quickly where we are here. We're 2:15. We're aiming for a break at 2:20. We're actually pretty close. We've got, I think there's only one big issue left. And let me go down here. Oh, there's 2. One is this one right here, transparency, accountability. And the other one is, what are we going to do about principles in general? Because I think we've taken care of all of this stuff in this column. And we've taken care of this one right here. So if we could move to transparency, accountability. Commissioner Thompson, do you have anything that you want to say about that?
talk's cheap. And I've heard people talk about that. And then if it isn't honored in actual practice, again, where's the ground truthing? Where's the monitoring and the effectiveness and the openness to seeing when we are and when we aren't? So when I looked at all of that, the language that came to my mind was about honoring the letter and the spirit of the public meeting law. And I think that all evolves over time. That's where the trustworthiness and the teamwork comes in. Because I think the more trust we have and the more we function well as a team, the more capable we are of transparency and accountability. But just saying it doesn't make it happen. And I don't know how to wrap all that into language except to say honoring the letter and the spirit of the public meetings law. And considering what Commissioner Webb knows about accountability and outcomes and all that, I mean, it fits in there too. But what are we accountable for, and how is that decided? And what's our process? What's our product? I mean, this is really, for me, this is a heart of this thing. So that's all.
Sheriff?
Well, I'm a little late to the party on this, but in my world, principles are values put into action. I feel like what I see on the screen as principles is really the reputation that the county wants to earn. And so you earn a reputation through principled action, right? So I don't know if the screen doesn't show showing values right now, but are we trying to get to a reputation what we're known for by what we do on the principles section?
Well, these are values, though. This is a
Right. I thought we were talking about principles here. I must have got lost here. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Well, we're still up in the values section on this transparency and accountability. The distinction between values and principles is kind of an artificial one at this point, so it's easy to get lost. One of the things that I just did here, because it seemed to work on at least two other things, was when I got rid of all the extra text and stayed with the first sentence, it started to make more sense to me. And I don't know, Commissioner Thompson, if it works for you and if we need to add something, but what if it were, decisions will be made in the open, that's the transparency part, and the county will be accountable for its decisions and for their implementation. Now, that's pretty general, but it's...
I like that, except instead of be open, I would say in open meetings, because I think that's specific.
All right, so if we said right here, in open meetings, is that...
Yeah.
That gets a little bit at what you were saying in your language, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because your language was
That's
right.
good. Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. What you did was good. That captures it. And I like the second part as well. So I'm agreeable to what you proposed as language there for both transparency and accountability.
So I mean, there's just a lot of explanatory text here, which it sounds, in general, the decisions that the commission's been making today are, yeah, maybe that's right, but it just makes it long. Let's get rid of it. So are we saying just get rid of this part of it?
No, I really like that because
oh, you do.
I really like this. Generally speaking, I want more concise. This one, I think I want to see more explicit, complete language, and this captures it for me. So I really want to keep this, unless somebody talks me out of it.
Commissioner Webb and then Commissioner Nebeker.
Can I completely complicate the situation now? There was something, though, that Commissioner Thompson said in her first remarks about this that I really would love to see captured here. And that was, and forgive me, Leanne, if I'm not quoting you correctly, but if she made a statement about the way the board functions as a way, and I can't remember the words you used, collegiate, you just, with civility or something like that, because I think that is really, that's a very subtle point that would be wonderful to be able to get in here. It isn't just a matter of conforming to open meetings laws. It's also behaving in a way publicly that gives your citizen, your community members, um, the view that you are functioning in the open,
So
rather than,
trustworthy teamwork. Those were the two.
yeah. And I think we have seen in the past that one of the things that our citizens objected to was that they saw the way the commission operated, it was fully compliant with open meetings laws, but it was very clear that decisions weren't being made in the open. And so those, I wish you could recapture those words that you said, because I really think they'd be valuable here. When discussion is open and thorough, and I don't know, Terry, isn't this why you're making the big bucks? Can you can you try to elicit those? It's that feeling, which I feel for us is extremely important, because we've come across a few years when it was real clear that decisions were not made in the open. And I'm not hugely, I don't know, I think this section is too long. I would love to have it be shorter. I'd love to have all of these statements, these big guys, half the size that they are. But I'd also love to be able to articulate the spirit of openness. Okay.
Commissioner, you've had your hand up for a while.
Commissioner Nebaker.
Oh,
Thank you. So I think it's pretty easy if we do want to keep where it starts with transparency. That's pretty easy to condense that. I can see a lot of words that don't need to be there and still have the same meaning. But as far as having the component now, Commissioner Thompson, did you say civility or something like that? We could we add, I mean, I think following, parliamentary procedure and Robert's rules, I mean, maybe that's just a given, but it certainly seemed to make a difference as far as our meetings being more civil and respectful. So I'm just offering that as a suggestion that perhaps that could be in there. But I think, sorry. But I think it's easy to condense this. I'm certainly happy to help condense it, but I don't know that you need me to do that.
I would just argue that it's fine, the first part of it. If you want to add something about public forum or some additional, word and description, I just don't think that the second section is necessary. I think that that's patronizing. I mean, why do we have transparency because of this and this? I don't think you need any of that. I think that transparency is what it is. People can read the definition of it, and if you want to include something additional, or, well, we're doing this in a public forum, or, under a civil procedure or whatever, that's fine. I just don't think you need any of the second part.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. Respectfully disagree, Commissioner Quila. I think this has been the sticking point and the biggest barrier to an effective county board of commissioners that honors its statutory responsibilities. what I've seen is passionate and sometimes vitriolic debate about the role of the commissioners and our relationship to staff. I think this is the part of our operations that is most subject to disagreement and most, and this is my personal opinion, where we fall shortest. This is the part, this is where, in my mind, our work lies, because this is where we are not robust. And this is from sitting here for 5.5 years on the dais as a commissioner and 5 years before that as a planning commissioner. So it's over a decade. So that's just my individual opinion, and that's why I'm so strong about what's in that language.
Let me suggest a possible solution here. I want to remind you that not there yet, but we will be there in a few minutes on focus areas. And the one focus area that there was unanimous agreement on was governance. And that means that there's going to be actions taken in that focus group to define what we mean by governance and what needs to be done to improve governance. And it means that then in 2021, there will be work done on governance issues to set up protocols, et cetera. All of those details are things that are right here, on how all this is going to happen. So what I'm suggesting, Commissioner Thompson, is that this language could move into the work that focus group is doing to set up what the actions will be for 2021, and it can then be reflected in the actions and start setting up what does it mean to have accountable actions, and how will that decision making occur? What will the procedures be? How do Roberts, are we going to use Roberts rules? All of that stuff. So what I'm saying is we could leave it right here with understanding that this is what's going to get addressed as part, in one way or another, as part of the governance focus area.
Thank you. I'm agreeable as long as it is fully and completely addressed in the focus area and by boards now and forth in the future. So thank you.
And I think that's the place to address it. I don't think that this needs to be, and this is an overarching document, not something of the moment and a reaction to something. I think we should be doing something to be sustainable and timeless. And I just think that that's the place to make changes or to address the governance part. But I think that just the definition of transparency is adequate.
I know Commissioner Sullivan and then Sheriff Phillips.
Okay, I agree with what's been said. There's so many different angles to this. I have one question about the inserting the word meetings, just because isn't this document for the entire county government? Because there are decisions made on the staff level that are not made in open meetings, but they're open in the fact that everything that we do is subject to open meeting laws. And I agree with Commissioner Thompson that I think the open meeting laws needs to be upfront and well known through everybody throughout the entire organization. And I think that's an ongoing process to keep that in people's forefront. So I'm wondering if we take out decisions that we made in the open, I don't know whatever that the sentence was before, and then maybe at the end say adhering to public meeting laws or open meeting laws, just to open it up, because not everything is done in a public, not everything in the county is done in a noticed public meeting. I don't know if that's a problem or not, but that's what I was thinking.
I would agree that that is an important distinction.
Okay, Sheriff Phillips.
Oh, I think everyone hit on what I was about to talk about, is that this is for all of the county employees to understand, and if we got into something specific about board relations, it might lose meaning to them and become obscure. So yeah, it should be addressed specifically in that governance section.
So if, I don't know if this helps or not, the point that I think is being made is that there are a lot of decisions, some of which are, administrative and made by staff, some that are just intermediate decisions on larger policy issues that are made by staff. So I think the intent is to say decisions will be made and in a way and documented that community members can determine how those decisions were made. And if you had that, does that get what we're looking for?
I'm not sure that something that specific, which is really an administrative issue, needs to be in the value statement. I really agree with Mark that I think so many of the words that are in here are just very repetitive, and I think that the tighter this whole thing is, the better. I certainly wouldn't add another thought to it.
I do like what is said, but I would like the initial statement to be, as Commissioner Webb said, as tight as we can get them.
Commissioner Nebeker?
Commissioner Nebeker?
Maybe I misunderstood what was being discussed, but it was stated, I believe, that there are meetings that are outside of the commission meetings where some decisions are being made, and some of those things come on the consent calendar, and I don't know, there's decisions about the budget, moving money around, and even though we do make those decisions in an open meeting, some meetings happen outside of the commission meetings where the public is not there. And I think Commissioner Sullivan said open meetings laws. I don't think that holding every staff member accountable to having every meeting being open is what we want to say. So did I misunderstand something here?
Don?
I'm sorry, I've been trying to not say anything today, but you're going to hear from me anyhow, I guess. If I could just suggest maybe is that what we're really talking about is policy decisions. And it's really policy will be made in open meetings because that's substantively what the open meeting laws deal with. And so what you might want to do is just say policy will be made in open meetings and the county will be accountable for its decisions and their implementation.
You want to put the word commission in front of that for clarity? Commission policy decisions will be made in open meetings?
Well, from my perspective, the board is the policymakers for the county. And so, I don't think it would add to say commission. I mean, it is the commission that are the policymakers. Certainly there are administrative policies that I have some authority on, and there's obviously the sheriff has authority as the elected sheriff, but really the policy of the county is in the board's purview. And so I would just say that policy decisions will be made. I don't know if the sheriff would have any comments about that, but.
My only thought is, would it be more clear if it's public policy instead of just policy? I don't know.
And that's.
Okay.
I don't know, Sheriff, if we're making policy decisions in the public, doesn't that become public policy?
Yeah, you could eliminate that word if you wanted to. I don't know what other policy decisions you would be making.
I guess I just don't want someone to get confused that I have a policy where you have to have shiny boots, and not taking that to the public.
But that's an administrative thing. That would go under uniforms, right?
I mean, so part of what the reality is that the sheriff and I have our own processes we use when we formulate policies, and we get input from our organizations. And so that's why this is really an outside in look, and really from the outside, it's the board that is establishing the substantive policies that have an impact on the community and its services and the budget. And so, you know, from my perspective, if we said just, you know, policy decisions will be made, I think everybody knows that the sheriff, I have certain authorities at the administrative level, but we're talking the capital P policy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That's a nice distinction. So capital P policies are made in public and small p policies can be made about shining boots and other kinds of matters in not open meetings. Thank you for the clarification.
So do you think that the word public needs to be put on there? How do people feel about that? So I see 2 no's.
I like it. I like it there because, again, this isn't just for us. This is to communicate to people reading it. And we just had this discussion, but we had to have this discussion before we could get clear. For somebody just reading through it, it makes it easy, I think, for them to understand. And for that reason, I like it there.
Yeah. Remember, per my previous comment, this issue of what is a public policy decision, who is in charge of what type of public policy decision, what's the difference between a board policy decision and an administrative decision, all of those things are going to get clarified in the work on governance, presumably. Either they're already clear or they're not. And if they're already clear internally, but they're not clear to the public, then there probably should be a document that makes it clear to the public. So one way or another, this is going to get addressed, I think. It's just a question of, it sounds like everybody's okay with this language the way I have it here now, with having added the words public policy to decisions and added the word meetings to open, and moving this part here out. Is everybody, I'll put that up, that's what I see as the tentative agreement.
Yes.
Everybody okay with that? Okay, I can see a couple of nods there. Okay. We're a little bit behind, so let me move quickly to the principles part and let me tell you what the issue is and then make a recommendation. We've got this part called principles, and you may recall that there were, in previous memoranda, that there were the things that Don called fundamentals, and then there were a bunch of things that Mike Leeson put together on what he thought were things that were, you know, more or less guidance that applied at an administrative level on how you would behave. And what we did is, in the last meeting, we didn't make any decisions on any of that. And I made the decision when I was trying to sort stuff out to say, well, let's worry about those things that Mike put in there as part of any work that we do on governance. And then, but we could put Don's stuff in there. And now one of the comments was this one here, which is entire section is confusing and unnecessary. And I took that comment to heart and thought about it and said, well, Don's already put his stuff out there, whether it's formally adopted policy or not. The commission knows what it is. It's this list of stuff right here, more or less. But there's no real need to go to these principles right now unless there's something comes up that isn't covered by anything else. So one possibility would be just to follow the request here, which is, this is confusing and unnecessary. In other words, get rid of it. Get rid of this, save a couple pages, avoid any confusion about what's the difference between a value and a principle. And remember that you've got Don's fundamentals if you need to turn to them. And if they turn out to be important, adopt those as part of the governance, include those in the governance work that gets done. That would be my recommendation for dealing with this, but I leave it to you to discuss that.
Commissioner Thompson.
I like that. I like that. Just cut that, add it someplace else later if it's needed. Governance got a lot of work to do, and it's brevity is the soul of wit. Sure, take it out. I'm for it.
Are you talking?
I do too.
I mean, I just want to be clear, Terry, are you talking about removing the entire section of principles at this point?
Yeah, I'm talking about removing these 2 pages right here that I'm switching back and forth between. And I'm not saying that they don't still apply. These are just except for the last one, it's a restatement of Don's fundamentals. You know, I guess, you know, maybe that would be a question, Don, for you too, on how you feel about that, because, you know, their principles, if we put those principles in the strategic plan, to me, they go beyond the strategic plan. They're principles for the entire governance system, not just for the operation of the strategic plan. But that's okay too. I don't know the best way to go. So Don, how about some comment from you?
Well, I mean, I 100% defer to the board, but I think that these can be included other areas, and I just think as long as the board knows that I will occasionally bring these out as we frame issues for the board, I'm fine with them not being part of the strategic plan, and I defer to the board's judgment on that. So.
Terry, you had mentioned that when you introduced Don's fundamentals, I believe you said, unless this has been adopted in policy elsewhere. So is that a possibility to have Don's fundamentals adopted in policy on the county level separate from the strategic plan?
Well, I can speak to that, and that's certainly possible. But what I would say is these are really working concepts that when I introduced them originally, it was in the context of the program that your board approved to distribute resources to the nonprofit partners as part of the COVID response. And so part of me framing that was that, you know, we're going to deal with these organizations that are dealing with countywide issues, that we're not always a direct service provider, and that in order for us to meet all the community's needs, we have to partner and collaborate. And so, you know, I think that those are going to be part of the fabric of the policymaking tree, no matter what. And so I'm okay, if the board is okay, that we'll just bring those out when we need them. So.
Okay, Commissioner Thompson?
You know, part of the board rules was supposed to be our relationship with external stakeholders. And it might be that these belong in the board rules. So we could consider that later, because that's a document that already exists, and external stakeholder relations could relate logically to that. But I think we don't have to decide now. We can just know that it's important. They'll be used and they'll go somewhere, adopted in a more or less formal manner as appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, good point. So if we want to go back to the question about principles, I'd like to go down the line and see how you all feel about just taking the principles out at this point. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Quila. How do you feel
Yes,
about that?
I'm in favor of taking them out.
Thank you. Commissioner Webb?
This was actually my suggestion to get rid of them. In other such rodeos that I have ridden a horse in, if you get too many levels of mission, values, yada, you kind of water down the meaning of those previous things. And you, on about page 3, you lose people anyway.
So you're okay with taking them out?
With taking them out completely.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Sheriff Phillips? Unmute yourself, please.
I don't have anything to add.
Are you okay with the principals not being in there?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Nebeker?
Call from 5034333380.
Sorry.
Commissioner Nebeker, are you okay with taking principals out of this document?
Call from
I'm not as sure, but I do not want any of that language that we were just reviewing. I want that to be in somewhere, but I don't know where. I mean, we are in a time where we do need to be flexible, and we don't know. We might have to be flexible for a long time to come. And I really appreciate that, those statements about that, along with other things. So I'm not sure where it belongs, but I don't want to see it completely go away.
Commissioner Nebeker, do you think it's possible that what you're referring to was what we were discussing under values?
Wait. So when we were reviewing, is it values?
Yeah, I think this is my understanding. Terry, maybe you can help me, but my understanding is that most of the meeting we've been discussing values, and then we went over to principles, and we've just kind of initially started principles. And one of the statements was that perhaps we don't need this.
Right. Right. So we're talking about, I'm going to put the 2 pages up right now.
Okay.
Page 16 and page 17 are the, right here. These are the 2 pages that are listed as principles that we're
Right.
talking about possibly taking out.
Yeah, well.
Right.
Okay.
And I think Commissioner Nebeker, you were talking about some of this stuff over here, right?
Go to the next one, please.
The
One that you just had up.
this one with the this one?
I don't know. I can't see that. Oh, I see. No, the other one that you just had up. It
This
also
one.
says principles continued. So isn't that principles?
Right here. Yeah, this is principles. Yes.
Okay. And then was there something else? Were there 3? I'm looking at I printed this off, but I'm having a hard time finding this. Okay. Was that the end of it?
That's it. Just those
Oh,
2 slides, 16 and 17.
16. Okay. Where is the verbiage about change, time of change? Where is that?
I believe that one was in the vision statement.
No. Really?
In this
Uh-huh.
time of constant change?
Yeah, that's the vision.
I think so, yeah.
I thought it was under principles. I just saw it.
I thought it was too.
Go to, is either page 16 or 18.
Is this the?
It's on page 16.
Okay.
It's the first
Yes,
one.
that's right. It is.
Yes.
That's it.
There it is.
Thank you. Yeah, I would really like to see something like this somewhere. I don't
in,
see that.
I thought it was.
Yes, that's it.
If I can add something, I started hitting on this earlier. My world, principles or values put into action. On page 17, it talks about collaboratively with other stakeholders, and that wasn't necessarily
There's a lot of feedback. I can't hear you.
How about now?
I've got some, I got some feedback problem here. I don't know what it is.
I'll try again. In my world, principles are values put into action. And if you go to page 17, if you could do that. Yeah. The first thing there, that we work in partnership with other service providers, and we didn't talk about partnerships as a value.
I would agree with you on that. I think that especially in the times that we're going forward, we really need to put it out front that we are going to need help from all directions, and that includes our community partners.
So, I mean, just when I did the mission or the strategic plan for the sheriff's office, I identified our values, our core values, and then had an explanatory sentence to explain what that looks like in action, which would be a principle. This is how we demonstrate our values. And then to simplify it a little bit, I identified what our reputation would be if we did all these things. And some of what's under principles seems to be more what we're looking to be known for.
That's an interesting way to go about that, Sheriff. Did you notice on what slide 13, which is the engagement collaboration? You know, we have kind of, in the value statement, we've made a big deal about that.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a really important part. And it's sort of taken care of there to me.
Right.
I don't think we need to re-articulate it.
Right. No, I agree.
The other word, I know that some of you have heard me say this before, but one of the most impactful lessons that I learned in county college was when one of the presenters said, the most powerful thing, the greatest power that a county commission has is as a convener. And that has stayed with me for a couple of years now. And I think I wrote, in fact, on this slide, you know, convene is a very good word, I think, both as a verb and a noun, to say, you know, it's in the absence of a regional planning agency, we are the regional planning focus, and we can be the convener to bring partners together to work on certain issues and to make that a very collaborative experience. So I think it's right there in the value statements. But I like the idea, though, and I hope we can transfer this into our work groups. It's how our constituents grade us is the ultimate outcome. How they feel about us, how they think we're doing, do they trust us, etc. And that's something I don't see in here. But I know that Don and I have talked about the issue of doing more of that, more of a comprehensive public engagement. And what am I trying to say? A survey, a how are we doing survey, that we hope we'll be able to someday do. But I'm hoping that that's the kind of thing that we can do in our governance section or things like that down the line. But I like always keeping that thought in mind.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Webb about the desirability of a survey. I would say that we do have regional convening bodies, and that's the function, in my mind, of the commissioner liaisons. Colpack, Northwest Act, Community Action Team, the AOC Policy Committee. I don't know where the echoes come from. So yes, we can convene, and we are engaged through our liaison relationships with larger bodies that do regional planning, local and regional planning.
I'm starting to get a little bit worried about our ability to get through the focus area stuff, which is pretty important. Where we were 10 or 15 minutes ago was Commissioner Sullivan asking if people were okay with dropping the principles. And I'm not sure what the answer to that is right now. It sounded like we had a vote or two for it, and then there was a lot more discussion on maybe it got brought back in. So, Commissioner Sullivan, are you willing to take a shot at that again?
Yeah, it sounded, it kind of flip-flopped there, didn't it? So with the discussion, it looks like they want to make sure some of the statements that are in the principles are included in the plan, but perhaps not necessarily. Maybe we can include them into the values. Is that your understanding, people?
I'm reading that section, and Terry's been taking notes all along about where bits and pieces can be redistributed. So I'm for taking out this section and moving on to the rest of the work we need to do.
Okay, so it looks like Commissioner Ebaker, are you okay with taking the principles out? As long as we're included these information into the values? Yes, and I think the other three have said take them out. Is that correct, Sheriff and Commissioner Webb and Commissioner Quila? That's a yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and I would concur.
Okay. With that, I think we have been through everything, and we are at the break, but we are about 30 minutes behind. So I think it's still a good idea to take a break. And this other part may go faster because I did the timing of this before I saw the commission responses, and it seems commission responses, I think there's a little bit more agreement than I expected. So with that, I've got 2:58. Can we make it a 7-minute break and come back at 3:05? Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So back here at 3:05 then.
Hello.
We ready to start?
I am. That's all that counts. I love when I crack myself up.
Yeah, well, that's COVID for you.
Oh.
Okay, I think we definitely got a quorum here. There's Commissioner Qualis. Okay, we're ready. Okay, I'm going to move quickly to try to make up a little bit of time. There are 2 items left. What are the 5 focus areas? And once we have those, then do you agree on the procedures we're going to use to get the focus area work done? Which means getting them described, figuring out what the big problems are, what kind of actions to take, evaluating those actions, and specifying what's going to happen in 2021. So here we go. The first thing is a lot of the background stuff is on page 7 and 8 of my memo to you. And I talked about broad ways to categorize the focus areas. And I thought about 3 of them and then tried to find a way in the middle. And I'm not going to go through that because in general, what your survey suggests is that you don't really have a big problem with most of this stuff. So I'm just going to skip over this part and move on to the 5 that were suggested. Here's what they are. And the memo talks about my reasons for doing that. And that was the previous slide. And then these are just examples that I gave so that you got a sense of, well, what might we be talking about within that area? And so just a quick review, here's the governance stuff. And you can see that, I talked about, some of the values that come up are probably going to be hit in the governance thing. And then infrastructure is focusing on, could be broadly about all infrastructure. It could be specifically about one thing like broadband that Commissioner Thompson and others have brought up, or rural capital facilities, which Commissioner Webb has brought up, or whatever. Economic development, and here there are lots of things. The most immediate seems to be trying to cope with COVID and restarting the economy, but then there's longer run stuff with economic development, ties to environmental quality, land use, et cetera. Environmental quality, the obvious ties back to economic development and environmental quality for its own sake, on preserving the amenity that quality provides, which has an economic component, and also providing the ecosystem services that it provides, which has another economic component. And finally, social services. So you can see that the way this works is governance is like the big umbrella. And you might think of that as the city manager, county commission office. And then these other things are what the other department heads are doing: infrastructure and facilities, economic development, environmental quality, and social services. Now, one thing that's not on this list, there are more services than this that the county provides. But in our discussions, the public safety did not come up as one of the issues the commission needed to get its arms around. That things were, and my impression was that things were moving along there. Not that there wasn't stuff to be done, but there was stuff to be done and it was getting done. And that goes back to this point right here. It's not necessarily what's the most important, because if you had a poll in the county, maybe public safety and education would be the 2 most important things. But it's, darn, this computer keeps responding to my mouse in funny ways. But it's what is important that will not get done without the focus of the commission. So is there something right now that the commission can leverage that's important, that but for the commission's interest, it won't get done? And that tends to be, not exclusively, but it tends to be those things that cut across different departments. So any one department says, well, that's not really mine to do. And an example of that would be homelessness. You know, is that the community development department? Is it the mental health department? Is it the public health department? Is it the sheriff's office? You know, is it emergency services? All these people are dealing with aspects of homelessness. So how does that get dealt with? So that's what I had. And then here were your responses. On the 4 that I got, 3 people responded with a 1, which means I can take those 5. I can live with those 5 if we don't make any changes. And one person said, I can live with it, but I got some desired change. And the specifics of that were the one thing, the 2 things that were specific. One, commissioners need more discussion to be clear on collective interest. Or are we acting independently in our working groups? I think I'll let the person that talked about this bring it up, but my interpretation of that was, have we got enough agreement among the 5 of us as commissioners right now that we know what the one commissioner in each of those working areas is going to do, or do we need to get more conversation so that each commissioner knows what the rest of the commission is thinking, or are we working more independently? Now, I may not have that right, but that seemed like a reasonable question to ask. And another one was a mention of housing. And finally, my comment over here, this summary is only for the selection of the focus areas. In general, there's lots of agreement, but there are more questions about the process. And that's what we'll get to after we can agree on what the 5 are here. So right now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, there seems to be pretty good agreement that these 5 areas are ones to work on. And there were no suggestions, and I'm willing to stand corrected since I've been wrong on so many things in the last day, but I didn't see anything that said, you know, we should get rid of this one and this other one should be in there instead. So let me just stop there and then go back to same drill. Commission discussion, what you like and don't like. Are there alternatives that you want to do, and how do you select 5? And I'll work the screen and take notes.
Commissioner Aquila?
I like the 5 focus areas. I don't see any changes, and I appreciate it.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, I think these are fine. And here was my rationale for not including housing. I think it's so gnarly. I think it's such a big problem that it makes sense that we refine how we do our work and increase our capacity in these smaller areas, and then we have a go at housing, because I think it's too overwhelming otherwise. I think we need to get stronger and more effective, and then take on housing, because I completely agree it's a huge problem. But otherwise, stick with these 5. These are good places to start. Let's go forward and see what we can do.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I'm fine with the 5.
Commissioner Webb?
I'm fine with the 5. And I think that as long as we can be real collaborative about what the agenda is for each group, I think we can probably even figure a place to begin to address some of the housing issues.
And Commissioner Nebker?
Yes, I am fine with it.
Well, that was unexpectedly gratifying. That's good. Let's move on. So we've got I got notes that say five commissioners saying fine with the 5. Commissioner Sullivan, are you willing to move on to the process part then?
Yes, but I just wanted to ask one thing, and sir, you can say no, but I see Sheriff Phillips there. Sheriff Phillips, is there there a sixth one that you want to jump on and take on?
I apologize. This is my first glance at this document today, so I'm trying to catch up and keep up at the same time. I only briefly saw the 5 and I didn't see them, but I understand there's wide agreement, and I'll trust the commissioners on this for sure.
Well, I guess so, and also you do have a big task on the jail, so we'll go back to Terry. We'll leave you out of this.
Right now, I don't have any reason to believe that the commission doesn't support public safety, and that is an overarching responsibility of the county, and I understand these are specific focus areas beyond the big ones.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff Phillips. So you.
Okay, so proceed to process then?
Yes.
Okay. So here is a summary of the suggested process. This is on pages 9 and 11 of the memo. 5 focus areas and 5 working group. 5 commissioners, therefore 1 commissioner per focus area as a chair. Assignments by area to be determined. And I based on my interviews with you, I put some down that seemed to line up the best to me, but that was just, my putting something down to give you something to react to. So that will be part of the discussion in a few minutes. Second thing then is what are on the working groups? And the working groups, and another question then is whether that I haven't made a recommendation for because my expertise is not public meeting law, but whether these working groups are they're going to meet virtually. Do those meetings need to be noticed? There won't be a quorum of decision makers. So I'll leave it to Don to figure that out. I think the answer is probably not. But then even if they're not noticed, do you want to give some notice so that any citizen who wants to can watch? And then secondarily, will other commissioners come in and what would be their role? My recommendation on that is that if they do come in because they're interested, they would be observers, but that the key commissioner, the chair, would be the one doing most of the talking for the commissioners. So then the working groups would have a board commissioner, and I'm thinking 1 staff doesn't seem like enough. I'm thinking 2 or 3, and I would think that it would be somebody senior, like a department head, and somebody intermediate that could both take notes and do technical work, and write reports because the staff is going to have to write these reports. That would be then 3 to 4 people, let's say 3 people. And then the rest would be what I call stakeholders. And that could be the obvious thing is other service providers, your co-producers. So, for example, if you think under social services that something really important is going to be health services, and there are other service providers that you want to bring in, then some of those should probably, somebody should be in there. But my recommendation is that a good-sized group, a workable group, is 6. 7 or 8 is manageable. 10 is kind of at the outside edge of what's easy to work with. But the staff would be doing all the meeting logistics, research, and writing. And there would be 3 meetings for each work group, and my memo describes what would go on in those meetings. But essentially, we got to move really quickly. So if there's not a getting to know you startup meeting where everybody just kind of tells them their name and their interest. The first work group is some work. There's brainstorming and a bunch of other stuff that has to happen. Don asked me to facilitate all the meetings, and later today he said, well, you or maybe somebody from PSU. And I'm proposing a kickoff meeting with training meetings for all commissioners and staff. So that would be soon, probably early next week, so that we can talk about what the report looks like, a template for the report, that kind of stuff. And then I've already mentioned before the tight schedule. And, ideally back in April, pre-COVID, we were hoping that this would be done mid-September. Post-COVID, we were hoping it'd be done end of September. Now I'm hoping that it can be done, it's got to be done by the middle of October at the latest, because we've got to write a draft report, and then that report has to go to commission, get looked at, and then get edited and revised. So that's the deal. So that's the pitch. Here's what I proposed before as the structure for the report. And this report, I'm saying it could be as short as 2 pages, but I think it's more likely to be that they would go like this. There'd be a page on what are the issues, challenges, and opportunities and desired outcomes, and maybe 1 and 2 together are a page or 2 at most. And then for each specific action, and I would think that there would be 1 to 3 specific actions that could be written up each in a page, you would write up this. And if that were all done, then you've got about a 4 to 5 page report on each of the 5 focus areas. And those reports go to me to then write an abbreviated version of that as the substance of the strategic plan. So, and then comments, not many comments, but a couple. One, an error I already noted, where I mistakenly put Commissioner Thompson on 2 working groups, and I had intended to put Commissioner Sullivan on one of them. And I might have even got that wrong when Teresa tells me that I even got that wrong when I sent out my correction, which is just a comment on how stretched I am right now. So I apologize for that. And then another comment, commissioners should collectively decide on the leadership of the focus groups and decide on the agenda for each. And that part's tricky. I mean, that's a comment from the surveys. Agreeing on the leadership is something that can be done today in the next half an hour, probably. Deciding on the agenda for each one, if that means, what are the issues, we don't have anything prepared on that, and that's a longer discussion, so I don't think that can happen today. And then finally from Don, he suggested that besides just me, maybe we could have some of the other people that you've met from PSU facilitating some of those work groups, because it's going to get kind of tight. So that's where we are right now. And so now it's to commission discussion on what you like and don't like about that, what suggested you change. Whoops, this shouldn't say select 5. That should say, this is wrong. That's a carryover from a different slide. You know where we are. Are we going to approve how do we approve the process so that we can start getting it launched? And even to the point of getting to maybe taking out calendars and seeing when we can start up, because it has to be as soon as anybody can.
So Terry, if I may, so it looks like everyone is fine with the 5. And so if we go that the commissioner in charge of that group will be the chair of that group. So does that take care of leadership?
Well, I think there was this comment about, I mean, what I picked up is that what I expected was people might have different ideas about leadership, or if not different ideas about leadership, at least, well, look, I'm on this one committee and maybe it makes sense for me to be on that, but I got a lot of interest in this other committee. So how does that work? I mean, I'd like to make sure that everybody is okay with that, and give you a chance to say, well, Terry assigned me to this, but I don't know why he did that. That was a bad idea, and I really don't want to be on that. So that's, so I don't know that it's okay. You can ask and say, does everybody want to take my suggestions? But then I'm not going to be surprised if they don't.
Okay, so why don't we go down the line and see what people think specifically about the tasks that they were assigned to. Commissioner Thompson, would you like to start?
So yeah, we're talking about broadband now, and the reason I asked for that is because I've already been working on it. And so in my mind, I'm trying to distinguish between what happens within Clatsop County and how much either dovetails or replaces what's going on with the broadband action team that's a tri-county effort. So what I think makes sense is to really focus on what happens inside Clatsop County with a few external stakeholders, but not including the other two counties related to broadband. So County Manager Boone has been working on that. Marty Runyon in the IT department has been working on that. So I think I'm comfortable going forward with that, looking at how we have internal and external stakeholders within the county. Once we get clear on that, then that will further the regional coordination. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Did you also have under the task under your name, was it also daycare? Are we simplifying that to just broadband, or would we be doing both?
Well, I don't know what the staff capacity is, because I know I'm working on that. I just work on both of those kind of every day. And I've got a call after this meeting. Childcare is more complicated because it's dealing with immediate need. It's dealing with a lot of community partners. I mean, Commissioner Aquila, your name has come up because the CMH Foundation, and you and I haven't talked about this. So I don't know if we've got time, all of us have time or staff support adequate to fit childcare into this rubric that we're establishing. If we did, great, but it's more complicated, more time consuming for staff and for the commissioners, because we'd be coordinating. So I'm
Okay,
open.
so that's a good point. But you, as of right now, is in this section of the discussion, you feel comfortable with both daycare and broadband under being your task, but we're just not sure if you could do both. But right now, just you're okay with both of them.
Well, I am doing both. I just don't know if I'm doing both under this rubric.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt here, and we can change this around, but this structure has these big headings: governance, infrastructure, economic development, environmental quality, social services. Childcare, I would not put under the heading of infrastructure. So childcare, if we divide up based on these headings, then broadband is not in the same category as childcare. Social services. That's a problem for Commissioner Thompson, who has expertise in both of those areas. So right now, my assumption was that, at least the way I laid it out, is that she would take on this one and then, be available if she were willing to consult on this other one. But that the chair of that, he would not be chair of two different working. Now, that can be changed, but that's the setup.
That's good. That's good. I like that.
Okay.
Well, the other thing that I had recently heard an interview, and they were talking about daycare in terms of what COVID has revealed, in that we do not have an infrastructure for daycare throughout this country. And we have an infrastructure for roads, but we don't have an infrastructure for daycare, and that's vital for the economy also. So I think you could think about that.
Yeah, well, it's a long-term interest of mine. I've been working on it before. I'll keep working on it afterward. I don't know that it fits within this particular construct. I think broadband fits nicely. I can share that. I can work on that. That'll be good. The childcare, I'll just work on outside this structure, but continue working, just so you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds good. Thank you.
I think with respect to this question right here, I have thought about it a little bit, and I don't know if the commissioners would be willing to do this, but it seems like a start of a solution. If at the end of the day today you agree on 5 areas and agree on who the chairs are among you and divide that up, it wouldn't be a bad idea for each commissioner to simply write a short email that says, there are 5 areas, I'm in charge of this one. Here's what I plan to work on there, at what seems important to me. And by the way, in these other 2 areas, here's what I hope other commissioners will pay attention to. And if everybody wrote those and sent them to everybody, then each of the chairs could see what the other commissioners were hoping would get addressed in each of the areas. I'll work that out a little. I'll work that thought out a little bit more when I put together the training session. But that's one way to solve this problem of making sure that everybody feels like what they care about is going to be at least discussed as a possibility for making the list in the appropriate area.
Okay, that makes sense, Terry. Commissioner Nebaker, how do you feel about the task that your name is currently on?
Yeah, I think it's okay. I'm glad that Terry, you just brought this up about maybe some things come under what other commissioners would be focusing on. For instance, so I think, didn't you put me with social services and or mental, physical health, and the arts, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty broad what's in there, and
Yeah.
the challenge for you would be, how do I, if I'm going to get it down to 1 to 3 actions, what's the process by which I'm going to narrow that down?
Yeah, and I think I need some guidance with this, because this seems, I don't have it clear in my thoughts at all. And okay, so the arts is it's across several sectors. I mean, it is social, cultural, it's economic development. So I'm not quite sure where that goes, but so do I then talk with, let's see, is it Commissioner Quila that's with economic development? So how does that, I don't know how to do that.
Well,
Commissioner Nebaker, I'm sorry, go ahead, Terry.
No, go ahead, Commissioner.
So, but Commissioner Nebaker, at this point, you have sat on the social services and the arts almost for your entire term, 2 terms in office, correct?
Yeah, no, and I'm fine with that. It's just that
It is pretty broad.
it
So
crosses
Terry
over.
is part of what you will cover. I'm sorry, Commissioner Nebaker, but it's part of what you will cover in the how to, for all of us before we get started, is ways to distill this down.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm really confused about this, how to proceed.
Like Don has his hand up.
Yeah, so if I can just kind of weigh in, because we're going to kind of make some of this up as we go, and there's no rigidity to it, and it's just going to take communication with everybody. What I would say is that if we agree to the 5 areas and we agree to the 5 board member assignments within those areas, then as I meet with each of you weekly, we can talk about what some of your ideas are, and then we can even touch base with some staff, get the groups formulated with the external partners also, Because I think, part of this is that this is not a 10-year strategic plan. This is what's going to guide us really for the next year, sometimes 2 years, and then there's going to be updates to it annually. And so, part of the measure is going to be is make sure that we have a palette of things we can actually get done. And so it's not going to solve every issue. It's going to take the first rung of the ladder and put our foot on it. And so, I think that as we talk about that, whether it's social services, Commissioner Nebaker, or if it's economic development for Commissioner Cuela, we could go a lot of different directions, but I think just having some conversations amongst ourselves, we will filter what those issues are. And I'm sure some of the outside folks will have some ideas too, but when you think about affordable housing, it's a big topic, and what it may be is just the first year is develop a dashboard so we can actually see all of the different housing units by type, by affordability, by location, and just have that information, which we don't even have now. When it comes to governance, it can be some basic performance measurement capacity that is linked back to the missions of the departments and the fundamental roles. And so, we're going to kind of work through this. So I just want to let each of the board members know that you're not alone. We're going to support you through this. And it'll just be conversations. And through those conversations, we will work it down, winnow it down. So.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question. So who will be responsible for finding the other people other than, those on staff for giving input?
So what I would suggest is that when we have our meetings, we can brainstorm who some of those are, and then talk with some others and see if those names resonate, and then we just invite them in, and after the first meeting, if there's anybody missing, we just add on.
Great,
So
thank you. That helps a lot.
On Commissioner Nebaker's point, if I could make one comment that I've been thinking about this, and I guess I'll have to put something together for the training meeting, and see what you think about it. What you pointed out, Commissioner Nebaker, is, and maybe you didn't mean it this way, but what it got me thinking about is, wow, that's a pretty difficult assignment. You do all, and this is maybe whoever made that comment about how do we know that we approval of the rest of the board members on what we're doing. If you're looking at everything that you could possibly do in social services, and you never, let's just say that everybody's working completely independent and there's a wall up between you and there's no talking about it, and you come up with a list of 20 different things that could happen, and you make a decision that the 5 top ones are this, and of those 5 top ones you're going to do the details on these 3, and then you get together with the commissioners and they say, the other 4 commissioners say, we're never going to do, X. That doesn't make any sense. That's a lot of wasted work to get to that. So what I've been thinking about is the possibility of doing some initial work, and then where the initial work is, here's what the big issues are in my area and what the staff and my stakeholders think are the big issues. And we've got this list of 5 or 10 things that could make the list of our top 3 action areas. And every commissioner makes that presentation in a meeting together, and then you work out in a session like this one. You give some direction back to each focus area on which ones the commissioners are likely to be able to accept. That's one possibility for getting some input, so that there's not, just something at the end that doesn't work because other commissioners have different ideas about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's keep moving. Commissioner Webb, are you comfortable with the task that your name has been assigned to?
Yes, yes, I would say, um, I think it's something I'd love the commission to be able to kind of on an ongoing way be connected to. At the same time, this is, of all of the 5 areas, this is the one that is most difficult to add urgency to. And you know, from the conversations that I hear from constituents, I think they're going to be upset that there isn't some kind of a direct responsibility for housing going on. So I would, you know, I just hope that we can figure out a way. I think that two different issues, maybe under the same umbrella. But I think that we need to be, I think that's a more urgent concern in our present situation. But I am perfectly happy to carry the flag for the environmental quality issues.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Aquila, are you
Commissioner Sullivan,
comfortable with?
can I
I'm
just
sorry,
ask a,
Commissioner Thompson, I'm sorry. Of course, I
Sorry.
didn't see you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, well, but Commissioner Webb, if you think homelessness is something that's of overwhelming importance, and you think we should be dealing with that right now, I mean, should we, and I'm asking my colleagues and Commissioner Webb and everybody, I mean, should Commissioner Webb be focusing on homelessness?
Well, she mentioned housing, not homelessness.
Well, okay,
But your question is right, is at this time, should we change the task from environmental quality to housing? Is that what you're asking, Commissioner Webb?
No, I'm not, because I'm one of the people who thinks that climate change is very real and that we have to start talking about it right now, before it becomes the kind of crisis that homelessness is. So in terms of long-term planning, it's something I care deeply about. But at the same time, I'm also, as the county's representative to the Northwest Oregon Housing Authority, I'm very interested in what's going on there and in what some of the future planning needs to be for the missing middle of the housing situation. And I just, as I say, I'm concerned. You know, we came up with this list in a way that, I don't know, the more I have gone over it, the more concerned I am that, I mean, I immediately thought, yeah, these are the 5 things, but some of these things are functioning pretty well right now. For instance, with economic development, I mean, we have a paid staffer who deals with economic development, and I think has performed wonderfully during the COVID crisis. And so I don't know the extent to which further action on the part of the county is needed. Once again, the issue on homelessness, for instance, is it's primarily an urban issue in Clatsop County, and I'm concerned about, you know, what the coordination between the county and cities is. I don't know. I'm sorry that I'm doing this. I just the governance issue, for instance, I think there are things that are very broad, and And I think we have infrastructure issues beyond broadband, but it's,
Commissioner Webb,
I don't know.
if I may intervene, Commissioner Webb, I hear what you're saying. I know that you care deeply about all of this broad topics that, there's a lot of feedback here. Just a minute, I think that you're very concerned, like the rest of us are, about all these different topics. But in terms of the task that we have in front of us, are you comfortable with working in environmental quality?
I am. Absolutely.
Because I think, and I've heard this several different times, is all of these issues really do go back and forth with each other. Example, the housing issue, that's important in economic development, it's important in social services, it's important in all sorts of, in infrastructure. So, but we're just trying to bite off a piece of the pie at this point.
Don has his hand up.
Sorry. So I just wanted to share that when we start working in these focus groups, we will share all the different, discrete areas. And I think, housing is something that needs to be on the list at some level because it is something that the county is actively working on. But I think that can fit within social services, and there may be a little bit more, a little bit longer list out of social services because of some of the areas we are going to be dealing with. But that goes back to some of the fundamentals. It's not always going to be us being the primary service provider. It's us, to Commissioner Webb's point, to sometimes just be a convener and to do other facilitation with our partners. Because there's a lot of things we can do with affordable housing. That's not the county providing affordable housing, but it's us convening the table and setting it up so that our nonprofit providers can actually do it for us. And so, but we need a dashboard that just gives the board the information that they need to even know strategically where we should spend all of our time and our energy. So it could be housing issue is just get a dashboard and continue to partner with our nonprofit housing providers. And so once we start the work, we will share what those areas are with the board. And if there's something that is of a primary concern to the board, we will make sure it gets addressed.
There's a choice here right now. I just want to point it out. I think Don is suggesting one way to go, which is stay with the headings that we have, see what comes up underneath those, and and housing might come up in a couple of different places. An alternative, and I'm not proposing this, but I just want to tell you that it's an option. If the 5 commissioners right now said, look, we know what the 5 issues are we have to deal with. And it's very specific. It's governance, housing, childcare, broadband, and I don't know what the other one is. But and so then your task is very much narrower. You've got a focus area that's trying to deal with just broadband instead of all of infrastructure. The reason that I put it the way I did was because I wasn't sure myself, and I didn't know how confident anybody else was at the commissioner staff level, that they knew for sure what the most important things were to do in infrastructure, the most important thing to do in social services. So part of the reason that that's there is to kind of make the list. And what might happen is maybe you make a list, and before there's a final decision on what the actions are, you look for the overlaps and you say, well, look, this housing issue showed up under social services because it affects, there's the homeless issue, there's healthcare and mental health issues. It's an infrastructure issue. It's an economic development issue. So maybe housing shows up that way by the different groups pointing it out as a possibility. I'm with Don. This is a work in progress. I don't think we're locked into, exactly we're not locked into any actions yet. We're locked into a way to find those actions. We're locking into a way to find those actions, which is we're going to have 5 focus areas and 5 commissioners working on that. But what comes out of it for actions, I think, is still open.
Thank you, Terry. Does that help, Commissioner Webb?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Quayla, how do you feel about the tasks that you have your name assigned to them?
I feel good about it. I'm pleased with my assignment. I think that the categories are broad, and I think that's ideal. I think when we have a lot of overlap and a lot of competing interests or multiple interests amongst the commission, I'm certainly willing to take input from other commissioners about things they think that should be included in economic development. And I'm happy to provide input on things like childcare, which I've been working at from CMH's perspective and what we're trying to do for our caregivers here at the hospital. So, and I know that Commissioner Thompson has been working on it. So I think we're all willing to try to help out where possible. But I certainly think that economic development for me is a perfect fit. I like it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Quayla. Now mine is governance. I'm real excited about it. I am also open to input, and I'm just excited about all this, and I'm really happy with how well everybody has been working together today. I think we've been doing a terrific job, and so I just want to thank you ahead of time, and I will turn the meeting back over to Terry.
Well, I think maybe that's, I think here's where I think we are by way of sum up. That we've got, hold on a second, let me get to, I'm in a different version of this now. Sorry, just a second, I got in the wrong place. Okay, so I think we've got 5 focus areas, we've got 5 assignments, and per Don, it seems to me like this is a staff job to work with the commissioners and brainstorm a list of partners that you're going to bring in to fill out your working groups. I'd like to try to, I'll work with Don on when we can have a training meeting, but I'd like that to be as early as next week if possible. We didn't really talk about the 3 meetings that I had proposed, but I'll take a look at that again and see if that still makes sense and talk to Don about it. I brought up a couple of ideas that I didn't have listed, which is a way for commissioners to share right now what they think is important in work groups that they're not in charge of, and the possibility of having an interim meeting of commissioners to see where the work groups are going and what they're coming up with, and kind of get some agreement on focus within work groups. But otherwise, I think that covers all these points here. And I didn't hear anything about this, but this is a pretty straightforward kind of arrangement that I would put together, just a template for, and so that staff had that. Does that work? Does anybody have any concerns about any of that, or does that sound like an okay summary? Okay, so then my last slide is this one here, and this is the work plan as it was revised in July. And my note at the bottom is just letting you know where we are. In July, we were hoping that we would have had, that by July, we'd already have the vision, mission, values done and have already started working on the strategies, the actions and policies. Well, we're just starting that right now. So that means that we're really compressed here. So in sum, the working group need to have reports by early October. We're aiming for an adopted plan by mid-December. And then this idea of having this commission work plan in November, December, that's really now January, if we can make that. So that's the adjusted schedule. And I think where the real challenge is going to be now is trying to get these work groups established, trained, meeting, and doing 3 meetings. And they would have to be mid-September, end of September, and mid-October. So training meeting at the beginning of September, first meeting by the second week of September, if possible. So I'm saying that's what I see having to happen. Don and I will have to talk about whether staff are available and can make it happen. And I guess if the commissioners now want to talk about whether that's a manageable schedule or not, we should hear about that. And because if it's not, then we're going to have to try to come up with something else.
I guess one of my concerns, Terry, as you know, in January, 2 commissioners will be changing. And so if we are doing the work throughout this time, for me personally, I would like to, if at all possible, to get this tied up and then hand it over to the next stage to the new board. With this COVID, which I don't see going anywhere soon, I don't know if people will be planning to travel during the holiday season, but I'm certainly willing to have more meetings in order to get this done in November and December, because I know I'm not planning on flying anywhere. So that's my input.
Don, do you have anything to say about, do you have any concerns about the schedule that we're looking at, or any advice?
No, I mean, I think we just have to dig in. So I'm certainly willing, and staff certainly is eager, and to support the board as we go through this. And so I just think at this point it's all, full steam ahead. So.
Okay. Well, I think for me, that wraps it up. The immediate next steps are for me to process everything that happened here today and get cleaned up vision, mission, value statements done, and a summary of what we're doing with the work plans. But I think that's a few pages of stuff, and then set up a program, and then work and staff to figure out exactly how this is going to happen. Training program together end of the week. So if that is 3:59.
So I think, Terry, you mentioned that you would like to have the training meeting sometime next week. Is that what you said? Or the first week of this September, which is next week?
I don't know if people are having that your voice very clearly. Is everybody else okay with it?
I just think
Your
your
voice is breaking up in exactly the same way that Kathleen's is.
Yeah, the sound is awful now. I think it just needs to get to set up that meeting as soon as possible.
I just think we're gonna have to stop.
The clock has struck 4. Everything's deteriorating.
Okay.
It's a new way to close meetings. Nobody can hear anything. Okay, thanks everybody.